Good afternoon slash evening, folks. Welcome to the 51st episode of the Matias Sports Podcast. I have baseball and hockey journalist Bill Ballou. How are you, sir?
I'm fine, Ken. Yourself?
I'm doing well, thank you. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you always, answering my text when you can in a timely fashion. I get people are super busy when I got a question about something. So, like we just talked up, off air, feel free to just talk about your career in the journalism field and what kind of expectations or kind of hoops you had to go through to get to where you are today, obviously.
Well, hoops is a very good term. Uh, people say, "Oh, being a sports writer must be the best job in the world." Actually, it is the best job in the
It
world. It
is.
was the best job in the world. Yeah, you get paid to go to games.
hmm
Beyond that, you only have free food. And when I did the Red Sox, I'd travel over the United States and Canada to Toronto and Montreal for free, and you eat in good restaurants. It was a wonderful job. Uh, I still like to write. I've done news writing as well, and I like to write. Period. But sports writing sort of gives you a broad canvas because you don't have to. You don't have to. The police said this. The police said that. There's more color to it, and you have a freer way of being able to express yourself. So I have loved sports writing. I still write part time, and I still like it. And the day that I sit down in front of the keyboard and say, "Boy, I don't want to do this," is probably the day that I'll step away. That hasn't happened yet.
hmm
The hoops are interesting. I've for people who will get discouraged in job hunting in this business, and it's easy to get discouraged.
Oh,
I tell
trust
them
me, I've
a
been
story.
there.
Yes, I tell them a story about my career. Is that in the 1982 it was, I was working for the Blackstone Valley Tribune Advertiser here in my hometown of Whitesville. It's a mile away from where I live, doing local sports. And one day the editor called me up and said, "Well, we don't need you anymore. We're changing formats here. Thanks for your service and goodbye." So I got fired. And I found out 2 weeks later when they called me back. I had gotten fired and replaced by a man who typed with his nose.
What the
And
heck?
I mean, it can't get any worse than that. And when they realized he was typing with his nose and people were looking in from the street and watching that, they said, "This is the image we want to project to the public." And so they fired him and they brought me back. And I've been writing sports ever since then. So, yeah, some strange things happen and it's not easy, but you have to be able to overcome the obstacles, as often as you can.
No, for sure. I mean, obviously, a lot of people probably my age and younger, because obviously I'm already in my early 30s. I'm gonna be 31 next month, and I've been at it kind of here and there, part time, obviously working full time, gotta help support the family, stuff like that. So. I mean, it's such a tough industry, and it seems like the industry is kind of going backwards, Bill. I mean, it seems like, the people that, like yourself, the Sean McAdams of the world, it seems like you guys are like, I'm not trying to call you guys old, but you guys are like grandfathered in. So you guys have covered the Red Sox, the Bruins, whatever it is. And it's like times were different back then from 2025 to the 80s. Like,
It,
I wish,
it,
go ahead.
it,
Sorry.
yeah, there's no way to compare how different things are today because
hmm
I'm still active and I talk to today's sports journalists, and it's an entirely different world.
hmm
And every year I go back to UMass. I went to UMass and I worked on the Daily Collegian up there. And just last month was their annual reunion. And you go back and talk to the student journalists there, and there's almost no connection whatsoever what they're doing now with what we did back in 1972, 73, and
hmm
70. So it is a different world. It's not a world as electronic as it is now. It's not a world I could exist very well in. I was very lucky to be writing when I was writing. And as I look back on it, the years that I covered the Red Sox were part of a real golden age of sports journalism. Uh, Papers were making a lot of money. They traveled a lot.
hmm
Expenses weren't really an issue. The Red Sox were a very interesting team. And in fact, almost all the Boston teams were interesting back then. And it was really a golden age. It was never a lack of stuff to write about, and papers were hiring people to cover things because a lot was going on, and they had a lot of money to spend on reporting, and that doesn't exist anymore.
It just sucks. I mean, times were just different back then from obviously now everything's so expensive and inflation and yada yada yada. How the housing market, but that's a story for another day. But it just seems like it's just such more difficult now. Like with my experience, if I'm trying to get into somewhere, it's like, hey, like your resume seems pretty good, and it's like, yeah, but nobody wants to kind of just go to the next step and just kind of do like a full-time thing. So, I
That's
mean,
Yeah, it's so competitive. There are a lot of people out there willing to work part time for not
yep.
much money. So that weighs against you. I will say that I'm 73. That 31 is not that old. It takes, it's
It
not
seems
sports for
it.
31. It does. I know it. And I was working my first job in newspapers, and it's funny how being in the right place at the right time helps.
Yep.
Was at the Amherst Record in 1974. I stayed in Amherst, and uh, it was bizarre. I got a job offer at the Springfield Union, which was a good daily in Springfield. But at that time, they had a typing requirement. You had to be able to type like a secretary because they were phasing out their
Basically.
typesetters in favor of the computer. And I had all the credentials they want. I couldn't pass the typing test. So I didn't know what I was going to do. I had been a milkman in college, summer job. I didn't want to go back to being a milkman. You had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yep.
And I was sitting at no prospects whatsoever. I was sitting in the collegiate office about 9 o'clock in the morning, which is early for me. And the sports editor of the Amherst Record, Tom Fitzgerald, who went on to have a great career at the San Francisco Chronicle, came in and said, "I just got hired to work in Rochester. There's an opening at the Amherst Record. Why don't you apply?" I got in my car, drove over, talked to the publisher. I was the first guy in the door, and he hired me the next day. If I hadn't been
Wow.
in the office that day, I don't know what would have happened.
Hmm.
And that's how I got started. And I worked my first, that was 1974. That would be May of, I actually worked the morning of my college graduation. So it was early June of 1974.
That's
And
commitment.
yes, and that was, it's either work or get laid off. I'll work,
Yeah.
and I can always pick up my diploma later.
Yep.
And it turned out my first job, $95 a week was my pay. And it wasn't much then. I mean, obviously it's nothing now, but it isn't much then. And the other paper I'd applied to was a Greenfield Recorder, who turned me down because they already hired someone to work up there. That was a daily. And they were going to pay me $115 a week. Well, that's okay, but $20 a week wasn't worth leaving. So I stayed in Amherst for 3 years, and then I worked for the Tribune Advertiser for several years. And finally, there was an opening at the Telegram, and I got hired to work on the news side in a town called Clinton. And another case of being in the right place at the right time is I'd wanted to go into sports. I was happy in Clinton. I wanted to go into sports. And I didn't. I did some high school sports for the Telegram, which I like doing. I love high
Hmm.
school football, especially, but I like doing high school sports. And the guy who covered the Red Sox in 1986, that was a brutal season to cover them. I mean, you know how the season ended. I mean, and he
With
was
the
just, I
Buckner
can't,
and the Mets and
that's
stuff.
right.
Yeah, that was
I can't
before
take
my
this
time,
anymore.
but
I'm going to go back and cover news in Southbridge. And so there's an opening for the Red Sox writer, and I applied and I got it. But there were a lot of detours and dead ends to
hmm
get there. And I didn't know how long I would last. I wasn't sure I was going to be able to do it. And it turned out that it lasted a long, long time. And I saw an awful lot to go on during those 30 plus years.
No, that's amazing because basically it's so many avenues people take. Like they basically start, they're living in Mass, Rhode Island, New England, whatever it is. Then they got to take a job in like New York. It's like, hey, you're gonna write for maybe not the New York Times, but some small paper in New York. You might cover minor league baseball. Cool, whatever. And then you work your way here, and it's like, hey, the Globe just hired, I think, a new guy that actually I've seen it on Twitter. They just hired this guy, Tim something. He's going to be starting at the Globe covering the Red Sox because Julian, if I'm saying his name,
McWilliams.
yeah, Julian McWilliams. Obviously, you probably know him very well. He
Yes.
went on to CBS, and now he's like a national baseball reporter.
Yeah,
So,
and that's interesting. Used to be you started a small paper and
hmm
then you moved up to a big paper. And now you generally start a small paper, you move
yep.
up to the big paper, and from the big paper you move up to either TV or radio. That's where all the money is.
And
Uh,
I'm sorry to cut you off. I love TV and radio. I've had a little experience with that, and I'm like, I enjoy it, but that is just another field that doesn't pay a lot,
no,
unfortunately.
the problem with sports journalism is that everybody wants to do it. So the
Hmm
supply and demand curve is in favor of the people who are hiring. And when we would
Absolutely.
have openings at Telegram for sports writers, we would get applications from physicians, from doctors and lawyers.
Wow.
Yeah,
I wouldn't
movie
think that. I'm
station.
like, they're already making pretty, what, six figure, whatever it is,
Yes,
like 100K a year, give or
yeah,
take.
they've been making pay cuts to come do it. And I mean,
Wow,
that's
that's
that's how
crazy.
much in demand this kind of a job is.
Hmm
So yeah, and I didn't make as much money as lawyers and doctors. I probably would have been a good lawyer because I can argue well. I would not have been a good doctor. I mean, your people would have been falling over in the street. But ate 3 meals a day, have a nice house, had a good family, and
That's
one time
awesome.
I asked the kids, I don't have to be traveling as much as I am. I can stay home and get a job covering news and being home, Monday through Friday. along the way. And so if you want me to do that, I'll do it. No, no, no. We want you to keep doing the sports. They loved hearing the gossip and the stories, and they asked me,
Oh,
"Oh,
for
well,
sure.
what's yeah, yeah, what's Roger Clemens really like?" And they could tell their friends. And every so often, they'd mix with the celebrities. And when they were old enough, when they were teenagers, I would take all of my kids on road trips with me. I let them
Hmm.
pick a couple of cities to go to, and that was a good experience. So they wanted me to stay, and I'm glad I stayed. It was as much fun as I thought it was going to be. It was actually more fun than that, and that doesn't happen all that often.
No, absolutely. And you know, that's stories they could tell their future kids if they have kids now, whatever it is. It's like I hung out with dad. I went to LA and I hung out in Dodger Stadium and I seen Roger Clemens pitch against that, whatever it was, you know, like obviously I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there,
Right,
but
but that's what happened.
the,
That's the things that. And my grandson, I have a grandson who's in the first grade, and we took him to a hockey game, or Worcester Railroads minor league hockey
yep.
game earlier this year, and he actually wrote a sports story about it. So
Really? That's
his mother
impressive
sent me.
for us for what,
Yes, it
six,
was
seven
great.
year old? Whatever, you know,
Yes,
whatever they
just
are.
turned eight.
Wow,
Just
that's
turned eight.
impressive.
Just and I have this the story saved in my files. I said someday when you're a full time sports writer, I can show people what your very first story was. But yeah, and so things like that they're very important, and I was always very glad that the family could be involved. And my wife went with me on a lot of different trips,
That's
especially after
awesome.
the kids got older.
Hmm.
She had her favorite cities. I did spring training for many years, and she would come down for maybe a week, and the kids would come down as well. So there, even though the salary wasn't great, there were a lot of fringe benefits. I mean, there's a lot of pluses
Hmm.
to the job when I was doing it. Probably more pluses now than there were at that time. 6 or 7 newspapers traveled with the Red Sox. I see the
Yep.
same guy on the road year after game. And now the Globe does. I think the Herald does to some extent, but there's almost nobody on the road anymore. It's just too expensive.
Yeah, I know, because I speak to Chris Cotillo from Mass Live here and there. I've had Chris Smith on my podcast. Like they travel, McAdam, like they kind of
Yeah.
take turns between the three guys there. Like, hey, somebody does this road trip, then somebody, you know, stuff like that. But I mean, it's probably expensive, obviously, and it's a lot of wear and tear on the person traveling because your time away from your family. Like, family is important to me, totally, you know. But obviously, you can bring the family on the trip and stuff like that. But um, what I'm not gonna say hoops again, but what was like your ups and downs of being basically a journalist and now doing it part time? Obviously, been in the industry for what 40, 50 years. So, what was
Yeah,
like the
I wrote
highs and
my
lows of the industry? Obviously, what you've seen firsthand.
I wrote my first sports story in 1969 for the Scribe, which was Northbridge High School magazine, and that
Hmm.
was another instance of being the right place at the right time. I was a business manager of the Scribe, and the editor of the Blackstone Valley Tribune, where I wound up working for a while, came in and said, "I need someone to cover Northbridge High sports in the fall. Where's your sports editor?" Well, the sports editor was there, but he was an athlete. He was playing.
Wow.
And I wasn't playing. I was a terrible football player, and they didn't have soccer under the sports. I wasn't playing. And I said, "Well, I'll do it." And so he said, "Well, it doesn't pay a lot to get $1 a game." And I did 9 Northbridge High football games. And at the end of the year, he gave me, well, he did a good job. He gave me bonus. I made $10. And that was, but once again, if I hadn't been in the scribe office, then who knows what would have happened. Um, but funny, the lows, the highs are some of the great people I've met. Uh, like one of my very best friends to this day is Joe Morgan, who managed the Red Sox in Morgan's Magic in
Oh, yeah.
1988 and 90. It was a fabulous time. And he had played amateur baseball in the Blackstone in Whitensville in the Blackstone Valley, so we're very close through that. I mean, I'm good friends with Hall of Fame announcer Joe Castiglione. I mean, how many
Oh,
games
he's
we've
a
done together?
legend.
A wonderful
He,
guy. Joe Castiglione, people say, "Hey, what do people really like?" And oftentimes I'll tell them, well, the person you see on the air or here on the air is not quite the same person off the air. Joe Castiglione is. He
yeah.
seems like the
Hmm.
nicest guy in the world on the air, and he really is the nicest guy in the world. So making friendships like that, real highs. There's been some difficult people to deal with through the years. When I covered the Sox in '87, in my first year, the manager was John McNamara. He was a miserable guy who hated the news media, hated
Oh,
reporters,
yeah.
very difficult to deal with him. I almost quit. I don't have to deal with this misery for the rest of my life. Fortunately, he was
Hmm.
gone, and Joe took over, and that changed everything. Uh, I made good friends with Rich Gedman, who's from Worcester, and he's coaching the Woo Sox now as a batting coach, and we still play golf in the off season and do things like that. So those relationships are really high spots. You see history. I've met 3 presidents of the United States covering baseball.
Wow.
Uh,
That's
Two of them
awesome.
before they became president, and the one who was president was George H.W. Bush. He was a real good baseball player at Yale, first baseman. And when the Red Sox opened the 1991 season in Baltimore, he threw out the first pitch, and so he
Wow.
came through the press box and a very friendly guy. He didn't stop and talk. He was very friendly. How you doing? And this very nice guy. I was very thrilled to meet him because he was a war hero and
Hmm.
he's just one of those classic great Americans from that era. And then I met his son. Later, his son owned the Texas Rangers for a while, George W. Bush. And at that point in time, the owners were trying to fire Fay Vincent because he was too good a commissioner. The owners don't want a good commissioner. They want someone they can push around, and Fay would not be pushed around. And George W. Bush was wanting us to lobby to keep Fay Vincent as commissioner. And we were all in favor of that because he was a good guy. And so George W. Bush took us out to lunch down in Dallas. And I met him then. And then oddly, I met Donald Trump after Game 7 of the 2003 ALCS with that awful Aaron Boone game. And
Oh my God.
it
Yeah.
was just, it was
Jesus.
just, it was the worst thing in history. I remember a time I said, when he ran for, I said, if this man's ever president, I will shoot myself. Well, I'm still here, so I'm alive. But it was a very bizarre experience, and that.
How was that actually? Stand on that topic for a minute or two. How was meeting President Trump right now? Like
I'll tell you what happened.
22 years ago, whatever it is now.
Tell you what happened. So the Red Sox look like they're going to win.
Yeah, for sure.
As happens in baseball, they lose, and
Yep.
they lose like this. It's this is a home run. It's over, and all of a sudden, what am I going to write?
Hmm.
I can't use it. And Yankee Stadium, that was the older Yankee Stadium, had two
Yep, it
elevators
was.
at the time. The press elevator and they had the VIP elevator. And if you were in the press and you stepped on the VIP elevator by mistake, you were liable to get arrested. I mean, they took it seriously. Get off this elevator.
Jeez.
But
Okay.
there was like two people on there, and we had like 100 people covering that game. So the press elevator had to go down in shifts. You had to wait in line and went down. They could get like 20 people on one at a time. And finally, it's my turn to go. I get in. Sean McAdam was with me. Sean, I got an elevator. The door
Super
started to
nice guy,
close.
Sean.
Oh, Sean, I've known Sean, I think since '88 when he started. Yes.
Yeah, super
And
nice.
I've done a zillion things with him. He's another huge hockey fan. He is a very
Really?
knowledgeable hockey guy. Yes.
Wow. I wouldn't think that because he's strictly Red Sox, all I see him cover, obviously. And I'm like, he must be a big baseball guy.
He is, but hockey is
Hockey's
the
up
other
there.
sport. And he's an expert and maybe somebody will meet him and you'll tell him I told you. Sean McAdam is a hockey expert in milestone goals allowed by a goaltender named Cesar Maniago. Every
Hmm.
time someone scored a big goal in the 60s, it was Cesar Maniago gave up the goal. And it's like a running joke. You look this stuff up. Oh, yeah, he gave up this guy's 50th goal, that guy's 50th goal. But he knows the game really well. So we
Hmm.
get along from that standpoint really well. And I detoured. Where was I going? Well,
Oh,
Trump.
Trump.
So,
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that's my fault.
so the elevator opens, and now the players have started giving interviews. So you got to get down there.
Yeah,
The
for
door
sure.
opens, and we pile in. We're squeezed in, and you can barely breathe. And the door starts to close. And all of a sudden, an arm comes in, and the door can't close. It opens up, and it's Trump. He can't wait for the VIP elevator. He has to come down with us, and he's a large man.
Yeah, he
And
is.
we couldn't get the door closed. We couldn't get the door closed to get down there. And
Jeez.
finally, two other writers said, we got to get out because Trump would not move. We said, get out of here. He wouldn't move. Two other writers got out of the elevator. We finally get down. By the time we get down there, we barely got interviews. I know a lot of guys didn't make it, got in trouble with their editors. Why didn't you get this quote? Why did it? Because Trump couldn't wait for the elevator. He was too important for all of us who were actually doing our jobs. So
Yeah.
that was the introduction to Donald Trump. Game 7 ALCS 2003.
What Jesus, what a crapshoot in PG terms. Yikes. I mean, the
It,
Red
it,
Sox
it, was-
losing, you're
it
just
was
trying to
just awful.
it's it's not funny you bring that up, but what was it? The comeback that I seen, what did it come out last year on Netflix, whatever it was?
Yes.
I think they highlighted that or whatever, and just the players were just in distraught. Like, staying on that topic, how was the clubhouse? Because the guys just looked like they just lost, I don't know, just lost the biggest game of their life, and it was just one game away from the World Series. So,
Well, that's exactly what it was. It
yeah,
was from being ahead when they were, and the worst thing was if they had lost it 8-0. Well, all right,
you
it's
got
it's
blown out. Yeah.
it's not the end of the world, but it's disappointing. But the way they lost it was the
Hmm.
way that managed. It's like '86 World Series Game 6. The way you lose is sometimes more important than losing, and
Hmm.
they lost that in the worst possible way. And it was. I think it was like you're getting some sort of a bad, any kind of really awful news, like, oh, by the way, some crook stole your entire IRA. Oh, it's
Yeah.
that I can't believe that. And it takes a while to sink in. And
Hmm.
it works the opposite way as well. When I covered the 2004 World Series and they beat the Cardinals in 4 games there, And, you think, well, this is, and I was so busy working. And they have a reception after the game, so it took like 2 hours for it to sink in. I've just seen something very historic. I was too busy working. It was,
Yeah.
and same with the players. It's so immediate. It takes a while to process, and
Hmm.
they were trying to process that, and they weren't having an easy time processing it, as you wouldn't expect that they would. This was one of the worst moments of their athletic lives.
And the whole Pedro thing and Grady Little keep on him out there and stuff like that. It's like, I was 9 at the time, but it was just like,
It was the funny thing
boom.
is, you get affections for players and managers. You cover them fairly,
You
but
feel for him in a way.
somebody like and Grady was a very very good guy,
Hmm.
and we all felt bad for Grady. We didn't know at that time he was going to get fired. Uh, After all, he'd gotten within one game of the World Series. That's not a
Hmm.
bad managerial thing, but
No,
he made that
absolutely
one
not.
mistake that eventually ended his Red Sox career. He came back with the Dodgers later, but he was one of those guys that you could talk to about things other than baseball. And he was a very humble guy. He was before he was in baseball. He quit to become a cotton farmer. He owned a cotton farm down in Mississippi or Alabama, and he said, boy, it was really hard work. So he was one of those guys who knew how lucky he was to be involved in professional sports and baseball. He had
Mhm.
great perspective. And he was a nice gentleman, a wonderful guy. And we felt bad for Grady, especially after he got fired. But during that time, you knew that he was taking a lot of heat. And we felt bad for Grady. We felt bad for Wakefield. Wakefield's a wonderful guy. Was a wonderful guy.
Oh, for sure, yeah. God
Yeah,
rest his soul. I mean,
yeah,
I just had was it 2 episodes ago? I had Lenny DiNardo on,
yeah,
and he's just a wonderful guy too. Like I talked to him, but he's like, "Wow, episode 49," and then he brings up, "Hey, Tim Wakefield," and then we get talking about him and stuff like that, and how great of a teammate
Did
he
you talk
was.
music with Lenny at all? He's a
No,
huge
no,
music guy.
I
Oh,
should
okay.
have, but he had his
Huge
daughter's
music
game.
guy. Yeah,
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Like we follow each other on Instagram, whatever it is,
yeah,
because I got my podcast Instagram. But long story short, he was at his daughter's game sitting in the car, so obviously I just kind of wanted to go through like the stuff quick, but then he's showing
yeah,
me pitches and I text him from now and then and stuff like that. And I even texted him. I'm like, I'd love to get Will Middlebrooks on, but obviously he's a busy guy doing stuff. So, I
yes.
mean, it's just a good connection to have. Lenny seems like a down-to-earth guy. Doesn't even seem like he played professionally, and he just seems like me and you, basically.
Yeah, he doesn't have what they call a big league attitude. He
No,
is down
absolutely
to
not. He's
and
very
he is
humble.
a huge music fan. So if you can bring that up, you might get him to talk forever about music because
Oh,
that's the
music. Oh, I would love to talk to him about
yeah.
music. But what's he
Uh,
playing a
he,
band?
I don't know if he plays in the band. I know that the Herald had a guy named Jeff Horrigan covering the Red Sox back when Lenny was there, and he and Lenny were very close, and they talked music all the time. And so when you talk to Lenny, mention Jeff Horrigan to him, but he was a huge music fan. And Middlebrooks is a very articulate analyst. I wish the
Hmm.
Red Sox would go back to having just one analyst. I don't like going back and
The
forth with these
revolving
guys
door. Yeah, that's.
revolving door. You get I like Middlebrooks' perspective. His delivery
Hmm.
is very good. Enjoyed dealing with him as a player who was very articulate about the game.
Yep.
He's well spoken. He's approachable. So I'm glad that he's doing well in this, and I'd like to see in him more of Middlebrooks as an analyst. Yeah.
No, even Lou Merloni, obviously, he's been on the radio. He's a former player, blah, blah, blah. He can talk, the game. He's filling in with OB. Mike Monaco's been doing a nice job. The little I've been watching the Sox lately because I know they've been kind of not doing great. Obviously, got swept by the Tigers, but Mike Monaco's been filling in for O'Brien. And I hope all is well with him because I don't know if he's just on vacation or whatever it is, but Monaco does a nice job. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh
Mike
yeah.
Monaco.
And Merloni made Uh, and Lou was essentially a utility guy.
Hmm. Yeah, he
Anyone
was.
who's good enough to play Major League Baseball is a great player. He was a really good utility guy. In the original Yankee Stadium, he made the best defensive play by a second baseman I've ever seen in my life, even better than something to. But it was, and I forget, it was a day game. I don't really, but he made this incredible play on a vicious ground ball, and it still strikes me as being the best defensive play I've ever seen a second baseman make. Lou Merloni. Uh, and it was like, the Red Sox had that play last night in the outfield where they
Oh, Abreu and
Bring it back.
Raffaella. That was
It
crazy.
wasn't quite like that, but it was that kind of a wow play.
Hmm.
Pedroia used to make those wow plays. Pedroia was probably the best second baseman catching pop-ups I've ever seen. He was the best defensive second baseman overall the Red Sox have had since I've been covering them. And I go back. I saw my first Red Sox game in person in 1959, and so I go back that far. And Pedroia was just an incredible defensive player. You couldn't believe how good he was compared to other guys. The other guys who've made very few errors, like Chuck Schilling, 1961 was actually the Red Sox Rookie of the Year, not Yaz, and Chuck Schilling only made like 7 errors all year. but he couldn't move more than one step to one left or the right. He didn't get to many balls. All the
Hmm.
plays he made were routine. But Merloni made that one great play, and Pedroia, as we sort of get off target here, Pedroia was the
No,
best
that's fine.
defensive second baseman I've ever seen play for the Red Sox.
No, for sure. And it's good thing you brought that up because he was just with his family out in KC last weekend,
Right.
checking in on the Red Sox or whatever, tuning in. It was nice to see he's doing well. Obviously, it seems like retirement's been doing all right for him, but kind of wish he was part of the staff, either some kind of assistant coach, whatever it is, kind of, just have that veteran presence. Like you got Veritek, you got Corey, you got former Red Sox guys on the staff leading the charge, and I
You know
wish
who
he was
would have
kind of
been
part of it.
I also would have been a great manager, but he wanted to spend time with his family, and that's often the case with these guys.
Hmm.
Is they don't see much of their family, and they want to spend that time. Was Mike
Absolutely.
Lowell? Lowell was a terrific baseball mind and a great temperament, I think, for a manager. But when he got out, he said, "No, now it's time for my family," and he's
Hmm.
been very serious. He's been doing that. He was in Cooperstown last year for the Joe Castiglione ceremonies, and he was also one of those very down to earth. You'd never know he was a major league athlete kind of a guy. And it was good to see him because he was one of my favorite guys to cover through the years with the Red Sox.
Yeah, for sure. And I think he just might have been on, I don't know if it was Tom Caron and Alex Spears podcast, the 310 to left there, that they
Yeah,
do on Nesson or whatever. I think I just seen him on something today or whatever it was, or yesterday. But
yeah, he's very approachable, but
yeah.
it's family time, and after a while, you get disconnected from the game. It's hard to come back as a coach or manager if you've been gone for 10 years. I mean, the game changes
Hmm.
so fast.
Yeah, for sure. He's been probably retired. You're probably right. What, 10,
Yeah,
15 years? Shortly after the Red Sox, I don't think he really played for anybody else. I mean, I don't
no,
know off the top of my head, but I know he
yeah.
played for Florida and obviously us, and he helped us with the '07 World Series. I'm pretty sure he was there as our third baseman.
He
But
was he probably the yes he was probably the Red Sox best position player in that 2007 playoff run to the World Series. He, clutch hits,
hmm.
as good a defensive third baseman as you'll ever see, steady, even tempered, and he's very very humble. I remember he got one year he got off to a great start with doubles. He had like 30 doubles after 2 months, and I said, Mike, you're going to approach the Reds the all-time major league record for doubles in the season. And he said, the record is safe. Don't worry. And sure enough, he went up to like 25 doubles. But that's the kind of guy he was. He was not. He was very humble and self-aware. A terrific guy to deal with.
I think he got into the media aspect too. I think he was an analyst or a part-time guy on MLB
Yeah,
Network,
he's
if I
done some of
remember.
that.
I don't know if he still does that now, but
I know
that's
he's back in Florida. It's
yeah.
funny. Last year's Cooperstown ceremonies. It's funny. The Cooperstown annual Cooperstown Hall of Fame induction. You can look at the calendar when it's going to be and nail that as the hottest day of the year. It is
It
always
it
the
always
hottest
is,
day of
yeah.
the year. And it was like that. We're with Joe Castiglione's post ceremony little party. And it was in a little building downtown Cooperstown. A lot of people there. David Ortiz was there and Mike Lowell was there. And I stopped to talk to Mike Lowell. I said, "Boy, it's hot." He said, "Are you kidding? This is a break from Florida." It was like he thought it was like springtime. It was so much cooler than where he lives down in Florida.
No, Cooperstown, my wife and I, we went probably about 4 years ago. I loved it. It was nice. Obviously, we didn't go for the Hall of Fame, but it was like September, whatever it was,
Yeah,
like 4 years ago. And I enjoyed it. I mean, it's definitely, if you're a baseball fanatic, baseball fan growing up, I recommend anybody go. So, I
it
mean, to
is.
see the Baseball Hall of Fame, and there's not much to do around there. Obviously, we stayed outside of Cooperstown, but it was still nice to go visit and take the tour and, this and that. But, definitely a recommendation for anybody that hasn't
Yeah,
been there yet.
it's such an icon. When you tell someone I went to the Hall of Fame this
It's
summer,
awesome.
you don't have to say which sport. You know what sport they mean. There's only one Hall of Fame. I was there. Uh, I ran the Cooperstown Marathon 2 years ago.
Really?
They
Wow.
have a big lake there. You run around the lake, and it was
Hmm.
brutal. It was most marathons. They have EMTs at the finish line.
Yep.
This one had undertakers. I mean, it was just unbelievable how difficult it was. I thought
Yep.
it was going to be scenic and beautiful. It was just uphill and rocky and difficult. That was my last. The only other time I've gone to Cooperstown, except for Hall of Fame things, is for that marathon. But going into the Hall of Fame where they have the plaques, it's like
Hmm.
going into a cathedral. See
It
all the
is.
great names and everything.
Yeah.
You almost don't want to speak. It's like you're in hallowed ground, and
Hmm.
it's one of my favorite things. And I've been to the Hall of Fame a lot of times through the years. I vote for it now. I went my first time out was 1960. I was 8 years old, and I
Wow.
never ever get tired of going into the room where the plaques are.
Yeah, it's amazing because it's like shortly after you walk in, they got the gift shop, stuff like that, and then it's like to your left, if I remember. But I mean, I haven't been
And
there
all of a
obviously
sudden,
in a
there you
long
are
time.
with all these great players. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But I know we're running short on time, so just to stay about the media industry or the sports journalism industry, what would you tell people watching this, anybody, what steps should they take to just keep trying at it and basically further their success in the little experience that they might have covering at a paper?
Just keep writing, and for as many different outlets as you can. It's as I've mentioned a couple times, a lot of this is a lot of great journalists out there, and a lot of this is just be in the right place at the right time.
Hmm.
You never know when that's going to be. So the more places you can be, and the more times you can be there, the better your odds. And and if you don't get hired, if you're not getting hired, it's not because he's not good enough. It's just bad luck a lot. And sooner or later, your luck is going to turn. I think. I mean, maybe someday you'll replace some guy who typed with his nose, and
That's
that
a
could be the
funny
ultimate.
story.
Yeah.
No, no, that is the funny story, but it's just so tough because all these websites want experience, 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 and one thing that's kind of stood out to me is I see these people write finessing and they write a story about the Sox and stuff like that, and I'm like, I mean, that's kind of cool, just writing for the website. I mean, you're not working for a
Yeah.
newspaper, but you're working finessing or you're going to cover a game. You got a media credential, and it's like, let's do a recap or like, hey, like Abreu did this or so and so did this,
Well,
but
plus you have something to show. Look, I can do this. This is my work,
hmm
and it's very concrete. It's not theory. There's one thing about applying for jobs in this business is you have to show your work. You have to prove that you can do the work, and having a number of clips or tapes or whatever you have to
yep.
use today is very important because then you've proven that I can do it, and
No,
that's a big part of the battle.
no, no, I definitely appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your day to do this with me. So thank you so much, Bill.
Okay, Ken, nice talking with you. Thanks a lot.
Same here.